In the previous episode, Katherine forced Jeremy to feed Silas his blood in order to obtain the cure. Silas ultimately drained Jeremy's blood and killed him. To bring Jeremy back, Bonnie agreed to help Shane complete the final human sacrifice. Overcome with grief from losing Jeremy, Elena was pushed by Damon to turn off her humanity. The story picks up right where the last episode left off. With her humanity turned off, Elena has gone completely dark. To prevent her from causing more trouble, Stefan uses Vervain to knock her out and locks her up in the castle. In a blatant act of defiance, Elena changes clothes right in front of him, a barefaced attempt at seduction, but Stefan is immune to it now.
Sure, when in doubt, manipulate people with sex. Yeah, it's the same trick Katherine used to pull.
Stefan remarked that Elena's tactics were just like Katherine's, but Elena insisted that Katherine wasn't worthy of being compared to her. Katherine has spent her life on the run, terrified of her own shadow. Elena only survived up to this point because the people around her made sacrifices and provided her with protection. For that reason alone, she was already inferior to Katherine. Meanwhile, in his search for Katherine's whereabouts, Damon shamelessly sought Klaus's help, asking him to hand over Haley, but Klaus claims he can't help. Though Klaus refuses to hand over Haley, he does tell Damon that another vampire knows Katherine's location. Klaus isn't giving directions, he's clearly mocking Damon. With no other leads, Damon can only treat this long shot like his last chance. While searching for the injured vampire, Damon is unexpectedly approached by Rebecca, who proposes they team up. She's stolen a vial of her brother's blood, guaranteeing they can make the vampire talk. Damon suggests starting the search at the hospital. It's dark and filled with blood bags.
Impressive. You're like Sherlock Holmes with brain damage.
But when they sneak into the hospital's blood bank, they're stunned to find it completely clean out. There's no way an injured vampire could have emptied the entire blood bank. He's so desperate for blood that he's likely still nearby. Klaus is treating Haley with the finest food and drink, even inviting her to a private viewing of his art gallery. Haley, playing her cards right, offers him intel in exchange for his kindness. Why does Katherine always manage to evade capture? Because she has a few loyal allies.
Perhaps you know the names of Katerina's special little helpers.
Maybe I know one or two.
After being locked up by Stefan, Elena moved the party to the castle herself, and these out-of-town contestants were nothing more than walking blood bags. Elena's eyes were full of cunning. Stefan was at a loss for how to handle her. So to prevent Elena from hurting anyone at the party, he called Caroline to keep an eye on her. When Elena sees them laughing together, she's consumed with jealousy. Elena assumes that Caroline is trying to get back at her by flirting with Stefan, but when Stefan calls her out on her jealousy, Elena denies it, claiming, "Of course not, I've turned off my humanity." To prove she doesn't care, she even tries to set the two of them up. Elena took a dark loss, and she had to get revenge. Just then, Sheriff Forbes arrives, reprimanding Elena for serving alcohol to minors and demanding that the party end. An enraged Elena attacked Sheriff Forbes, but Caroline stopped her just in time.
Fine, calm down.
Calm down, I'm gonna wring her skinny little neck!
Meanwhile, in an attempt to lure out the vampire, Damon bites a nurse. Sure enough, the vampire was drawn to the scent of blood. Damon immediately subdued him, only to realize that they were old acquaintances. Damon's mind races, and before Rebecca can even approach, he reaches into the man's chest and rips out his heart, ending his suffering. But Damon isn't one to be moved by mercy. He recognized the vampire's identity, and at that moment, he knew Katherine's whereabouts. The so-called mercy was just to silence him before Rebecca could get any information. When Klaus gets wind of this, he tells Haley that she's free to go, but Haley clearly has no intention of leaving. Klaus is infatuated with Caroline, and Haley has feelings for Tyler. Both of them long for loves they can't have, and there's an unspoken empathy between them. Two lonely souls, why torment themselves waiting for a love that's out of reach? Amidst the chaos, Elena manages to escape, forcing Stefan and Caroline to split up and search for her. Unexpectedly, Elena developed a murderous intent toward Caroline and launched a deadly attack. Fortunately, the Salvatore brothers arrived in time, and they each held one of them to pull Elena and Caroline apart. Caroline, still shaken, tried to reach Tyler for comfort, but no matter how many times she called, she couldn't get through. Matt shows up with a breakup letter from Tyler, explaining that as long as Klaus is alive, Tyler can never return home. He doesn't want to keep holding Caroline back. In the span of a single day, Caroline nearly dies at the hands of her best friend, and then gets dumped by her boyfriend. After their intimate moment, Klaus notices a familiar tattoo on Haley's back. It belongs to a long thriving wolf pack. Haley had been searching for clues about her biological parents, never expecting the surprise to come so suddenly.
Matters of family are sacred.
Tell me.
Suddenly, Stefan gets a call from Sheriff Forbes. Several more hospital blood banks have been robbed. Stefan immediately informs his brother that someone is stockpiling blood on a massive scale. Damon tells Stefan to handle the investigation himself, lying that he's taking Elena for a joyride when, in fact, he plans to take her to New York City.
New York. City that never sleeps.
In 1977, New York saw the emergence of a bizarre serial killer who specialized in pretending to be a drunk, luring in kind-hearted passersby before killing them. High-end hunters often appear as prey, and a kind-hearted couple thus fell victim to Damon. Decades later, Vampire Damon returns to the city that never sleeps, but this time, he's transformed from a predator into a mentor. Damon claims he's bringing Elena to the big city for a wild adventure, but in reality, he's searching for a cure. It turns out that Will, the vampire Katherine sent after Haley, was a forger, and Damon suspects Katherine was one of his clients. Stefan warns his brother not to tell Elena the real reason for their trip, or she'll run. Damon promises to keep Elena so distracted she'll never suspect a thing.
Listen to me, she's ruthless without her humanity. The cure is the fastest way to get it back.
While Damon was secretly contacting Stefan, Elena changed to a new hairstyle. Elena is becoming more and more like Katherine. When they arrive at a quiet bar, Elena is disappointed. Damon tells her that after dark the place will be full of decadent nihilists and a variety of live blood bags for the taking. Unexpectedly, Rebecca shows up, accusing Damon of ditching her and going off to hunt for the cure alone. She even regarded Damon as her best partner. Hearing this, Elena's expression grows serious, and a guilty Damon quickly denies it. To divert the conversation, he tells her a story from his past. After shutting off his humanity, Damon became the serial killer who struck fear into the hearts of New York citizens. It was in this bar that he met Lexi. Lexi had been sent by Stefan to help Damon recover his humanity, but Damon wasn't having it. He bluntly told her that he and his brother are nothing alike, and her methods would never work on him. While Damon drinks alone, Elena and Rebecca share a quiet conversation. It turns out Elena has been playing dumb all along. She knows Damon's true purpose is to find the cure, and once Damon finds the cure, the Salvatore brothers will no doubt force her to take it in the name of love. So Elena played along and used Damon to find clues.
You're playing him. No, he's playing me. I'm just returning the favor.
As night falls, the bar fills with people, and Damon and Elena feed together, unnoticed by everyone around them. Back then, Lexi had come to save Damon, but instead, Damon corrupted her. With Stefan, Lexi had to restrain herself and couldn't feed on humans, but with Damon, it was a completely different story. She could indulge in blood and revel in the pleasure without a care. Snapping back to the present, Damon invites Rebecca to join in the hunt. While Elena and Rebecca are lost in the thrill of feeding, Damon quietly slips away from the dance floor, searching through Will's files for clues about Katherine. Elena and Rebecca were well aware of Damon's actions. One had no intention of taking the cure, while the other longed to become human again, so Rebecca suggested they team up. Surprisingly, Elena rejects the offer. She thinks that despite being an original, Rebecca is still ruled by her emotions. Clinging to hope and fantasies will only slow her down.
You just made me miss the old Elena.
In the midst of the files, Damon finally finds Katherine's forged identity. At that moment, Elena shows up. They both know what the other is after, but they continue playing their game. Elena presses Damon for more details about his history with Lexi while using seduction and alcohol to lower his guard. Just as she was about to steal the clue, Damon caught her red-handed. There's no need to pretend anymore. It turns out Damon had used the same trick on Lexi all those years ago. He had seduced her, playing with her emotions. He pretended to be reformed by Lexi, and they had a passionate make-out session on the rooftop. When the sun rose, Lexi, who didn't have her daylight ring, nearly turned to dust, so she had to hide in a dark corner. Lexi couldn't save Damon back then, just like Damon hasn't been able to help Elena regain her humanity now. Elena admits outright that she has no intention of taking the cure. Damon, however, is just as firm. This isn't up for discussion. When Damon wakes up, he realizes Elena and Rebecca have not only taken the clue but also stolen his car. To face off against Silas, the most powerful witch in history, Stefan has no choice but to ask original vampire Klaus for help. Caroline turned her grief over her broken heart into hatred for Klaus, which made Klaus feel very aggrieved. He had already made great concessions.
You can't hate me for driving him away.
No, I can. And I do.
Meanwhile, to gain Bonnie's trust, Silas, disguised as Shane, reveals his true identity. Silas wants Bonnie to complete the third massacre, which would restore his powers and allow him to resurrect everyone who sacrificed themselves for him, including Bonnie's boyfriend, Jeremy. But completing the third human sacrifice means killing 12 people, and Bonnie's conscience is bothering her. Silas emphasized, these 12 people can be resurrected.
Bonnie, you can do this. For Jeremy.
If Silas is telling the truth, then all the sacrifices would be worth it. When Stefan asks for Klaus's help, Klaus says there's nothing in it for him. Stefan reveals Silas's ultimate goal. He wants to break down the supernatural purgatory, which would bring all the dead supernatural creatures back to life, including vampires, werewolves, witches, and hunters. Klaus has killed his fair share of people, and the thought of them returning changes his mind instantly. Later, they discover in an ancient book of dark magic that the three massacres form a triangle. The first is human, the second is hybrid, the last one is witches.
You want me to kill witches?
We've been over this. It's temporary. They'll come back.
Where could they find 12 witches? Bonnie recalls that her mother has deep connections in the witch community. Silas tells Bonnie to act as bait, pretending she needs the witches to help her rid herself of dark magic. With Bonnie's current level of power, the witches would have to unite as one to purify her. That night, Bonnie waits for the witches at the designated meeting place. The elder witches arrive, ready to cleanse a misguided Bonnie, but Bonnie remains torn. She still has a choice: help Silas complete the massacre, or accept purification and return to the right path. Meanwhile, Caroline and Klaus plot the locations of the first two massacres on a map. Drawing an equilateral triangle, they got two possible locations for the third human sacrifice. At this moment, Stefan returns, but he hasn't found Bonnie. This suggests the massacre has already begun. They decide to split up to search for the site of the massacre. At the same time, in order to purify Bonnie, 12 witches formed a formation to concentrate all their mana on one person, and their lives were also linked together. The time has come, but Bonnie can't break free, let alone turn the tables and kill the 12 witches. One of the witches holding her down shouts, "Submit to the spirits." With her eyes rolled back, Bonnie continues to resist. If she surrenders to the spirits, she will lose her chance to bring Jeremy back. Just then, Stefan arrives, shouting at the witches to stop. He exposes Silas's lies, declaring that Bonnie has been brainwashed by him. Aya, the lead witch, immediately changes her mind. She pulls out a dagger, convinced that Bonnie is beyond saving, and prepares to end her life. Stefan was shocked and hurriedly stopped Aya. He never expected to bring Bonnie's death upon her, but Stefan is no match for the witches. Meanwhile, Caroline and Klaus arrive at the scene. Klaus chooses to stand aside, believing that Bonnie must die, but Caroline can't stand by and watch her best friend die. In a split second, she kills Aya. At the same moment, all the other witches fall dead as well. Caroline is left stunned. She had no idea the witches' lives were linked.
The triangle is complete.
The next morning, Bonnie wakes up, but her memory is stuck at the events on the island. She urgently asks Stefan if he's found the cure. Stefan suspects that while the purification wasn't completed, it somehow wiped parts of Bonnie's memory. When Bonnie asked about Jeremy, Stefan looked sad. Poor Bonnie has to feel the pain of losing Jeremy again. Klaus helps Caroline bury the 12 witches, and for the first time, Caroline, still feeling guilty and heartbroken, feels a flicker of affection for Klaus. Softly, Klaus asks if she needs a comforting shoulder to lean on. Caroline is moved by his words.
Why don't you find someone less terrible you can relate to?
Just when it seems Klaus might finally win her heart, he chooses instead to lash out. It was Silas, who had transformed into Shane's appearance. He senses a powerful presence behind him. It was Silas, disguised as Shane, the strongest original and the most powerful, which have finally come face to face. Even without a single blow exchanged, the air is thick with tension. Although Silas had regained his magic, he still didn't intend to show his true face due to the threat of the antidote. Silas wants Klaus to help him recover the cure, but it's not a request, it's a command. Klaus laughs at the audacity. Since when had he, the most powerful original, become a pawn for others? But when Silas pulls out the white oak stake, Klaus's smile falters. That steak was supposed to be with Rebecca. How did it end up in Silas's hands? Klaus decided to strike first, but Silas disappeared in the blink of an eye. Before Klaus could even react, Silas stabbed him in the back with the white oak stake, and Klaus let out a scream of agony. The stake is dangerously close to Klaus's heart. Silas had deliberately aimed to miss. He doesn't even consider Klaus a threat. In an astounding show of strength, Silas snapped the indestructible white oak stake in half, leaving part of it embedded in Klaus's body. The constant pain served as a reminder to Klaus of the vast difference in their power. For the first time, Klaus was defeated so miserably, left in complete humiliation and disgrace. Elena and Rebecca searched through several cities but still found no trace of Katherine. While passing through a small town, Elena, who was hungry, set her sights on a woman. This irritated Rebecca to no end, but to their surprise, the woman mistook Elena for Katherine. Elena and Rebecca were overjoyed it seemed when they were at their wits' end. Fortune smiled on them. The woman extended her wrist, offering her blood freely. It seemed that Katherine was in this town. Elena eagerly started questioning the woman, while Rebecca impatiently jumped in with her own questions. Oddly enough, though, whenever Rebecca asked something, the woman looked confused, as if she'd forgotten who Katherine was. Rebecca quickly saw through the trick. Katherine's compulsion had a failsafe. No one could remember her unless she appeared in person, but Elena looked exactly like Katherine. Meanwhile, Damon found the car that Elena and Rebecca had abandoned. Not only was it out of gas, but it was also scratched up. He immediately called Stefan for help. The Salvatore brothers must catch up to Elena and Rebecca before they find the cure. Otherwise, Elena will definitely give it to Rebecca. Stefan couldn't resist taking a jab at his brother. The Salvatore brothers unanimously decided that they could no longer indulge Elena and had to use some strong measures. In order to find out where Katherine is, Elena asks around town. At that moment, a mailman complimented Elena on her new hairstyle, and both Elena and Rebecca's expressions shifted. Katherine had been there just 2 minutes ago. This meant she was nearby, so they split up to search for her. Katherine actually took the initiative to find Elena trouble. Fortunately, Rebecca arrived in time. Elena cared only about the cure, completely indifferent to the fact that Katherine was the one who killed Jeremy. Katherine quickly picked up on something. She realized that Elena had turned off her humanity. Rebecca, out of patience, attempted to compel Katherine, but it didn't work. Katherine had taken vervain. As it turned out, Katherine wanted the cure as leverage to trade with Klaus. Apart from the white oak stake, the antidote was the only poison that could kill Klaus, and this antidote was her ticket to freedom. Her deep fear of Klaus ran bone deep. Little did Katherine know, the Klaus she feared as a monster had recently been reduced to a pathetic state. Since being severely injured by Silas, the half-broken white oak stake remained lodged in Klaus's body, causing him unbearable pain. Because the wound was on his back, he couldn't pull it out himself. Klaus, cold and ruthless by nature, tried to break his own arm but still couldn't save himself. Left with no other choice, he was forced to turn to Caroline for help. Caroline was both shocked and sympathetic to see Klaus in such a vulnerable state. Gently, she stroked his cheek and whispered softly,
As much as I would love to watch you die, you still haven't found me that cure.
Silas truly deserves his reputation as the most powerful witch in history. With hardly any effort, he broke Klaus both physically and mentally. Klaus was very unhappy. He had even lost without seeing Silas' true face. When Silas drew near, Klaus, trembling, backed away like a frightened dog with its tail between its legs. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, Klaus showed fear, with no trace of fight left in his eyes. When Silas' illusion disappeared, Klaus felt relieved. Before long, the real Caroline reappeared, and Klaus, a bit irritated, could barely hide the exhaustion in his voice. Caroline, completely bewildered, complained that Klaus was being unreasonable. I'm busy managing 3 graduation proms, and you're playing the victim and snapping at me. What's that about? After confirming that this was truly Caroline, Klaus hurriedly sought her help, quickly recounting the details of his injuries. Caroline, upon hearing this, laughed in satisfaction. She angrily scolded Klaus for his cruelty, reminding him that he had driven Tyler away and even killed Tyler's mother. But if Klaus were to die, Caroline and the others would all have to follow him to the grave. Meanwhile, Katherine was refusing to reveal the location of the cure. Elena and Rebecca find out from her memo that Katherine has company and they are meeting in the afternoon. Elena planned to disguise herself as Katherine and go to the meeting. She mimicked Katherine's makeup, but Rebecca thought it wasn't enough. Katherine rolls her eyes. Elena then set her sights on Katherine's clothes and jewelry. Katherine had no choice but to comply, and the moment she showed any reluctance, Rebecca would resort to force. Elena also started to imitate Katherine's tone of voice. Shortly after Elena leaves, the Salvatore brothers arrive in town. They recognize Katherine at first glance. At the same time, Elena was anxiously waiting. She felt slightly uneasy, wondering who Katherine's accomplice could be. Then, behind her, a familiar and warm voice spoke. To her shock, the missing original, Elijah, had been involved with Katherine all along. Elena was only slightly startled, but then she quickly stepped into character. However, Elijah's actions would completely shatter her composure.